Today I'm here conducting an interview with Fred Holdridge. It is January 24th, 2006 at about 10:50 a.m. and we're at his residence in German Village. First, if you could, just tell me what your name is.
Fred Holdridge.
And what is your ethnic or racial background?
Caucasian, Duke's mixture of races. My dad said we were just a little bit of everything.
And where did you grow up?
Lima, Ohio.
All right. And when did you leave Lima?
I left Lima to go to the Army in 1943. Came back in 46. Went to college till 1950 at Kenyon College in Sunbury, Ohio. Went to Chicago for a couple of years. Springfield, Ohio, about 2 or 3 years. New York City, and then came to Columbus, Ohio in the late 50s.
All right. What is your earliest memory in your childhood?
What kind of memory?
Just what's the thing that you remember? What's the thing that you remember at the youngest age?
Probably Christmas, an early Christmas, when things didn't go right, and I remember crying, going to bed. Of course, by morning, Christmas Eve, by morning everything was all right, but Christmas Eve, that's about as early as I can remember.
Did you go to school in Lima?
Yes, all the way.
And then you indicated you attended Kenyon College?
Yes.
When was that you were at Kenyon?
1948 to 50. I had, in the Army, I had enough training to give me a year of college credit.
And did you graduate from Kenyon?
Yes.
And what did you graduate with?
A number of people. No, a bachelor's in history and economics.
When you were growing up, did you have any heroes or people that you looked up to? And if you did, who were those people?
Not really, I don't believe. No Superman, no John Wayne, no Hollywood stars. No, I don't believe I admired a lot of people, but I never really, looked up to him as a hero or anything like that.
When you were growing up, did you ever hear people refer to anyone as being gay or discuss other gay people?
Yes. When I was in high school, I think the guy's name was Ducro. I used to call people Ducro. Say, oh, it's a Ducro.
Ducro, can you?
That was his name.
Oh, okay.
And because he was gay, they just referred to anybody like him.
And how did people treat this Mr. Ducro?
They were not very nice.
And did he acknowledge the fact that he was gay, or was that something?
I don't believe he did, no.
Any other people that you're aware of that were gay when you were growing up?
Well, along the way you discover people who are gay, but insofar as anybody else telling me somebody was gay, no.
All right. When was it that you first realized that you were gay?
That's a good question. I know I liked the homosexual experience. I think I'm like a lot of people who didn't acknowledge that they were gay. Said, well, someday I'm going to get married and all this, but I think that the day that I would say that I was going to say this is it was the day I met a guy that I just fell in love with. I said, my God, look at him. He is beautiful. And I went over to board, and then I thought, well, that's it. I had homosexual experiences when I was in Lima. When you're in high school, you're with a buddy, or you do the usual. When I was with my aunt in New York, I had an experience. Interestingly, I had spent 2 summers with this guy. He was my only friend up there because there was not many people my age. And the last night, we discovered that we were gay, but never had an opportunity to enjoy the experience because he was gone, and I've never seen him since. In Lima, I met people, had gay experiences, but I still fought the idea. In fact, the first guy, older man that I was with, took me to the Veterans Administration, to a friend of his who was a psychiatrist, to prove that I was gay. You know, I took these tests, and that still didn't convince me that I was really that way until this, of course, was when I was out of the Army, and I was put out in 1949.
When you went to the Veterans Administration to take these tests, now how old were you at that point?
Well, I'd been in the Army. Let's see, I got out in 46, 23. I was probably 24 or 5.
All right, and what was this test? What did it consist of? Do you recall?
Oh, it was multiple choice questions, and the main thing is, all I could see, it shows how you're related to people and everything. The only thing I remember about it is that I had qualities that for meeting people, and I wasn't a recluse or anything, but I don't remember anything about it, any gayness in it at all. It was just sort of psychiatric background, I guess.
You mentioned a moment ago that you first fully embraced the idea of being gay when you met somebody and fell in love.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when did that take place?
That was when I was in college in 1948 or 49. I was in Detroit with a gay guy that I didn't, I had a relationship with him, but I didn't think it was anything other than getting off, so to speak. He introduced me to this fella, and the fellow said, if you ever get free, give me a call and come on up. Well, I was at college, so I went up to Detroit and met him. And interestingly, he'd been in the life for a long time, and he was extremely nice. It's your first love. I still look at him with the fondest memories. But when I met him, I said I was in love, and he said, "Fred, you're just in love with love." He was getting married 6 months later, and he got married, had 3 children. As far as I'm concerned, that was the end of his gay relationships. He was never out again. But he sort of guided me. He took me to my first gay bar.
Where was that at?
In Detroit. Incidentally, this other man had taken me to one, but he never told me. See, he never told me it was a gay bar. He just took me there for a drink. But he didn't want me to know that everybody else was there gay. But we walked in this gay bar in Detroit. It was Saturday night, and it was jammed. And of course, back then there were sleazy places every place.
And this would have been like 48 or 49?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he said, "Everybody in here is gay." And I said, "You are out of your mind." He said, "No." He said, "Fred, there are lots of them." And of course, I didn't even know what the term gay meant. South Pacific was out then, the musical. And one of the songs is, "It's gayer than Christmas, am I?" And younger than springtime, that song. And it says gayer than Christmas, and everybody laughed when they sang gayer than Christmas. And I said, "Why do they laugh?" He said, "Well, that's the term they use for us." And so he was pretty instructive about the gay life. But he was my first love. That really convinced me I was gay then.
During this time period, when you were in Lima, and then later in the military, and then back here again at Kenyon, how did gay people meet each other? How did you go about meeting other people?
I never met a gay person in Kenyon. I met a gay person in the Army maybe twice. Once at a college I was going to in the Army. We just looked at each other, and he made an advance on me, and that was it. Another time I was riding a bus in Alabama, and in the rain, and all of a sudden the guy had his hand on my leg, and I thought, what is this? And so I let him go the rest. He said, get off here. We went off. We went into a furnace room of one of the dormitory, one of the barracks, and it was the first time I'd ever had a French kiss. Whoa! And it was probably the first time I had ever had oral sex. Been given oral sex, and I really enjoyed it. I did not see him again until I had an accident in the Army, and I was in hospital. And this guy comes strolling by my door. He comes into my room, closes the door, gives me oral sex, walks out, and that's the last I ever saw him. Experiences were very few. Photographer in France. One of my buddies had his picture taken. He said, the photographer had his hands all over me. I thought, uh-oh. I went down and had my picture taken, and he was right. He did have his hands all over it. In Lima, it was a street experience. So I'd see somebody, and they'd look at me too long or something. You know, there's just certain chemistry there, but it wasn't very often. There was a gentleman who worked in a hardware store, friend of the family's. And one time we were like waiting for something. He said, well, let's go back in the back room and see if we can find it. Well, I was in high school then. I was probably junior high. And he just played with it. He just brought me to a climax with his hand. Coincidentally, he had a son who was gay. I had an experience with him once, and this poor son got married. You could say, he was so gay. He was just so gay. But he felt this pressure of marriage, so he married a girl, and later on, he was discovered, and he was in high school and lost his job, and divorce, and the whole works. So, all through my life, the thought of being gay was not a pleasant thought. It happened, it was not, when I came home from the Army, in Lima, there was they'd uncovered a sex ring, homosexual sex ring. The main announcer for the local station was discovered giving somebody oral sex. And then everybody, some poor kid, his lead in the senior class play, was kicked out of school.
Now, what year would have this been?
That would have been 1948. Right, 46. It was on the front pages of the papers, and my dad said they ought to hang them all by their balls. So I was not, and at Kenyon, at one point in Kenyon life, there was a whole group that were ordered out of the school. One night, they said, by morning we want you all gone. And so every place I turned, homosexuality was not a good thing. And I always thought, I dated, brought dates down for dance weekend, etc. And I always thought, well, someday I'll get married, but I never went all the way with a girl then, only in the Army once, and that was it. But I still had that thought. I can still remember in Detroit saying, oh yeah, I'll get married later, but and I'm glad I didn't. I would have been a poor husband.
During the time period that you were in the military and in college, did you ever disclose to any heterosexual people that you might be gay?
Never.
No family members?
Until 1950, when we came out in the dispatch. But by then, most people knew, but I never said anything. I sat in his kitchen one day with a friend of ours, a close friend here in the village, and he said something that had a gay note to it. And I said, Pat, that's the first time that a straight person has ever said anything to me about being gay. I said, I don't care, I'm glad. He said, it breaks the barrier, so it's fine, but you're the first. And that had to be in late 60s or 70s. But we never mentioned it. Howard and I worked together. When I met Howard, well, that's a whole other story. But we had to rig stories where his mother was my mother's sister, and we were cousins, and had the same relatives. All had to, and we really had to, because we worked for the railroad then, and that would have been the last. Oh, that would have been the last place in the world to ever let anybody know you were gay.
So the reason why you told other people that the two of you were related was to conceal from them the fact that you were a couple?
Right. That we were gay.
All right. And was this during this time period, were you living together?
Yes.
Okay, so that was the justification
Right.
for two men living together?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, why don't you tell me about when you and Howard first met?
Howard and I was living with a guy in Chicago, and we decided to break up. And I moved out, went to an apartment, and I was dead tired. Saturday night, but I said, Fred, you're not tied to anybody. Why don't you go to a gay bar? So I went to a gay bar, Cliffs, which was just a hole in the wall, because back then they changed all the time. They raid them, and then they close them, and then you go someplace else. So I go into this gay bar with about 12 bar stools and not many people, and I meet this fella who is also a fraternity brother of Theta Pi, and we were talking about our fraternities, and so then Howard walked in the room, and I looked back as he came in the door, and I did a double take, and so he was with another friend, just a casual acquaintance, which I didn't know at the time, but he walked out. I excused myself and walked out, and terrible line, he says, you have a light, and of course I did, and he had a Olds convertible, brand new one, and said, you want to go for a drive? And I said, sure. So we went for a drive. I don't know if you know Chicago, but there's a place called Belmont Harbor. It's up off of the lake. It's where a lot of the boats dock, and it's fenced in, but it's if you had a driveway in. He told me later he had driven by there once. He thought, boy, that'd be a nice place to park. Well, we parked there, and no sooner got involved than there was a policeman on us. They separated us. They wanted Howard to give his new car, to let him go. Then they'd come to me and ask for money, and went back and forth, and finally they kept Howard's driver's license, and at midnight on Saturday night, or even later, they said, come back to a certain spot and bring us $500 cash, and we'll give you back your driver's license, and we'll arrest you. So back then, there was no bank open, there were no ATMs, no friends to call that had $500. So we stewed around, we drove wherever we thought we could get it, and finally I took a check for $100 and gave it to him and said, this is all we can come up with. Took the check, gave us Howard's driver's license, and that was all. I was, at one point, when they left me in that car alone, I thought of just running out and jumping over the fence, and if they shot me, I really didn't care, because I knew that publicity would be terrible. But fortunately, they were dishonest cops. So that was the beginning of our relationship. And then he worked for the railroad, traveled Monday through Friday. I called him on Monday, he wasn't home. Tuesday and Friday when he got home, his dad said, he lived at home. He said, there's some guy by the name of Fred Holdridge who's been calling you all week. Well, that was the start of our relationship.
And what year would have this been when you first met?
1951, I believe. And when we were 50 years old, that's when they had this thing in the paper. Dispatch did a full section on gay life, and in a friendly way. And Michael Rosenberg asked us to come out, or so to speak, in the paper. And we said okay, because by then, if they didn't know we were gay, it wasn't going to hurt anything we felt. Earlier, many years earlier, the Dispatch did an article on us as the store operators, and we were worried sick that he was going to mention that, and we weren't going to open the store that day. We were going to go down to the paper in the morning, the office, and get the paper, and if there was anything gay in it, we weren't going to open the store, but it was a very good article, so we didn't mind.
After you and Howard met in Chicago, you then together moved to Springfield, is that correct?
I worked for American Broadcasting Company. He worked for New York Central, and he was transferred to Springfield. Second time that he came up from there to see me, he said, "This can't go on this way." Now, I later, in looking back, I realized that Howard is one of these people who, when he makes a move, which he made several on the railroad, he would cut off all his connections. I don't cut off connections with anybody. Clear back to grade school, I'm still with him. So he said, "This can't go on." And I said, "Well, I'll quit my job and come to Springfield." I imagine he about died, but anyway, I don't know what he felt. Maybe he was glad I did. Anyway, I went to Springfield, and
what year was this?
This was in 1951, probably. And he was the head muckety-muck. He was the train master in Springfield, which is a pretty big job. I couldn't find a job anyplace. My buddy, the man, my first love, meanwhile, he had transferred from Detroit to Chicago, and I went to work for him, for American Broadcasting. When I went to Springfield, he had transferred to Hollywood, and he said, "Fred, if you ever need a job, call me and I'll get you a space." He was head of ABC in Hollywood at that time. And I said, "Howard, I can't get a job. I'm going to have to call." He says, "Come on out." I got as far as Chicago, and I really don't want to leave Howard. So I turned around, went back, called him, and said, "I'm not coming to Hollywood." And then finally, I got a job on the railroad. Lowest job you can get, called crew caller, where the trains, when they put a freight train together and they're ready for the crew to come in, you make the calls and get the crew assembled. Well, then through Howard, I got up into freight traffic. I got some nice jobs along the way, but we worked on the railroad together.
When you lived in Springfield, you lived together?
We lived together. Our only friends were gay friends. And, back then you had your own little circle. You met somebody who was gay, couples usually, because you're a couple. You don't want singles, because that's just going to mess things up. So you find gay couples, and you do all your stuff together then. Your parties, your dinners, you're going out. But you're always embarrassed to go out to dinner with more than 4 guys out to dinner. We went to New Orleans once, and we had a yacht, a 150-foot yacht, with a first mate and a captain and the whole works. Given to us by a friend of Howard's, and so what does he do? 4th of July weekend, we're in the harbor of Biloxi, and he has his binoculars out, and so there's a pretty girl. Go get her. And the first mate to go down and get in the little boat was, he was like, we had that yacht overrun with women, and oh shit! So we said we want to go to New Orleans. He says okay. So Howard had a friend in New Orleans, in the French Quarter, and he called him and said, "We're coming to New Orleans. Find some gay women and come out to this boat," because we didn't want the captain to know we were gay, because he was a friend of Howard's friend. So we had a boatload of gay women, and so you always were worried about this situation.
When you were living in Springfield, what did a gay couple do in Springfield?
Gay couple usually stayed home or went out with gay friends and had dinner and movies or something like that.
Right.
Something that wouldn't draw attention to the fact that there were a bunch of gay people together. You wouldn't go to a gay bar because that's where, singles went.
Were there gay bars in Springfield back in the 50s?
I don't believe there was. They used to come to Columbus, I think.
I think you indicated earlier, after you lived in Springfield, you then moved to New York City?
Yes, we moved to New York. I had an aunt who had an apartment on Central Park West, and she said, "If you come to New York, I'll give you my apartment." It's right above Tavern on the Green. Big 14th floor. Wonderful apartment. I had lived with her for a couple of years in the summertime. When I lived with her, and it was this other guy that I told you, he was my friend then, he had a date one night, and so he couldn't come to dinner. Well, he called that Margaret and said the date didn't show up, could he come on over? And she said yes. Then she said, Fred, come on upstairs. And she got me in drag. Had me dressed up as a girl and said, Mo, here's your date. She didn't know anything. She was perfectly innocent. But that was funny. So then went to New York with that Margaret, and we found that it was a nice apartment, but living with a woman who was now my age, who was in her 70s or 80s, who wanted to be with us all the time. It was not good. I mean, it just didn't work out. And finally, after about a year, we said, Aunt Margaret, we're going to get our own apartment. And so we moved into our own apartment. Frankly, she confronted me at one point that I was gay. And we had a big, I did not say I was, I had a big argument.
What did she say?
She said that friends of hers had said something about the funny, and a nurse said something to her, and it was a very bad scene. And I said, I don't want to ever talk about this again. So then we decided to leave New York. With that, we just thought we don't want to be around. So, interestingly, my aunt, who gave me the apartment, took that much money out of the will that she was going to give me for the price of the apartment. See? But the nice thing was, when I didn't stay, she put the money back in. She's a very nice woman, and she mentioned it once in her letter, said something about, had I only known, we could have done it so much together, or something like that. But it was never brought up again. So we decided we would come to Columbus because we had a lot of friends, not a lot, we had maybe 3, 4 people here that we knew who were gay, and we had lived in Columbus or been to Columbus a lot, so we knew that it was a nice, quiet town, no superhighways, one skyscraper. We decided that when we came, we were never going to work for anybody else again. We'd do our work ourselves, real estate or whatever. So we came to Columbus.
All right, and what year was that you moved to Columbus?
It was probably in 1955 or 6.
All right. When you came to Columbus, where did you live?
We lived with the gay friends that brought us here. Well, interestingly, a gay friend from Columbus came to New York while we were there, and we did a lot together. And he said, I can see that you 2 guys are so unhappy that I think I will not leave New York until you promise me you will leave New York. So we promised him we would leave New York. And coincidentally, when we left, he got a job at Bloomingdale's and went up. But anyway, he was the one who really got us to do it. And what was the question? I've forgotten.
I just asked you where you lived.
Oh,
so you stayed.
So we stayed with our friends, and Howard said one day, after about a week, he said, we got to find a place. Now, we had a house in Springfield. All our furniture was in storage, but we didn't want to move that yet. So we bought a 4-apartment building up in the University District and moved into one of the furnished parts. So we just moved in. That was it. And then after that, we bought on Sunbury Road, and we lived there about 20 years, and we came up here.
When you moved to Columbus in 1955, 1956, how would you describe the gay scene or gay life in Columbus?
There again, being, quote, married, we circulated in a group that was most 90% were tied to each other. So that you didn't go to bars a lot. If you went to bars, it was an occasion. It wasn't just going every night to the bars. And so we had dinners together. We went to movies together. John, the one who with whom we stayed, had a place up on Cocosing River beyond Mount Vernon, and we would all go up there for a weekend, and they'd play cards and drink and swim and just have a good time together. But we didn't go to the bars very much.
Were there particular movie houses or restaurants or hotel bars or anything like that were known as being gay-friendly or safer places for gay people to go?
Well, the Dexter Hourglass was supposed to be a gay bar. The Chittenden had a bar that was gay. I don't remember the name of that one. and I know there's one called the Pink Flamingo, I really was not familiar with the gay bars.
The two places you referred to, the Deschler and the Chittenden, those were hotels?
Yeah.
And there was a bar within the hotel that...
gay people had a tendency to be in.
All right, and then the other one that you referred to, the Pink...
I don't know. That was just a gay bar.
Okay.
There were several of those, but I can't tell you the names of them.
How did you and Howard meet these other gay couples that you spent time with?
Well, you see, for instance, when we were in Springfield, we met one guy who introduced us to his friends, and then they would introduce us to their friends. And we did have 3 or 4 gay women friends here that we would go out with when you needed to have a woman with you. You meet your friends when you're a couple. You meet your friends through other couples. You get the word. Somebody says, "Oh, you're going to New York, or you're going to look up so and so," and that's the way it gets started.
Sort of like an underground network,
right.
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
After you moved to Columbus, do you recall? You mentioned in Lima that at one point there was some sort of a sex scandal, somebody got in trouble, and then at Kenyon there were some people that were asked to leave due to some gay activities. After you moved to Columbus, do you recall anything like that happening here?
Well, you always read about people getting caught in the parks, stuff like that. I remember in the village, one of our German village members was caught down there on that bike path, and you'd have thought that was the end of his career, but by now, people died out, people forgot about it.
Now,
when I was younger, that wouldn't have happened. I mean, they would have been marked for life, but I think the atmosphere was changing.
This incident that you're referring to, when was it that took place?
The bike path?
Yes.
Oh, that happened probably in the 70s.
Okay. Do you recall any things earlier than that? People either being suspected of being gay or getting in trouble for gay activity, being arrested, or...
Not that I can think of.
In your time in Columbus, do you recall any local people who were well-known who were gay or suspected of being gay?
There was some guy who worked for the Gooding Enterprises as a carnival company who was gay, and I think people pretty well knew him. He was a pretty wild guy. That's the only one I can think about.
You were talking earlier about some of the difficulties that gay people experienced in concealing their relationships or concealing their identity, police harassing you and Howard and charging you money to not be arrested, and those sorts of things. In your time here in Columbus, do you ever recall any protests or rallies or picketing or anything that gay people might have done in response to any type of harassment?
There again, because we were trying to play it straight, I have a guilty conscience because I never backed any of the gay organizations which were struggling then. There were a lot of them, not a lot, but there were some that were struggling to make headway. We had let them do the battle. We never participated.
Which organizations do you recall?
I would say Stonewall's the one for earliest. I don't know how long Stonewall's been around, but that's the earliest one I would remember.
All right. You indicated when you first moved to Columbus, you bought a 4-apartment building on campus and lived there. Was there any gay activities or gay student groups or anything that you were aware of at the university there?
In fact, we had a couple move out of there, a married couple, and they owed us some rent. I knew where the wife's sister lived, and I went to her, and she informed us that they weren't married, but we were shocked that we would have a couple in our building that wasn't married, and this is a heterosexual couple. So, no, I don't remember anything about gay life in that area.
You talked some earlier about the social activities that you participated in as a couple. Were there clubs, like a bowling league or a softball league or anything like that?
There might have been a bowling league. I don't remember any softball club.
Was that something that you and Howard participated in?
No.
Were there any restaurants that were known as being a gay place to go?
The only one I could think about would be the one that's still out there. That's where they used to have their their Halloween parties. Berwick. That would be the only one I would think of.
Did you ever, after you came to Columbus, did you ever go to any drag shows?
Never was into that. I went to some that I was maybe somebody knew somebody, or we went for that reason. Incidentally, when I was in Chicago in the 50s, there was a place called the Brass Rail, and it was a bar about as big as this apartment, and had a stage up behind the bar, and there was a couple of guys that did lip sync singing, and it was pretty gay for that period, and it attracted a whole gay audience. But they never did anything that would be, subject to arrest or anything, but it certainly attracted the gay crowd, and we thought it was just the gayest thing we ever saw.
When you were here in Columbus, are you aware of anyone having any problems with the police because they were gay?
No.
That story you told about Chicago was pretty frightening.
Yeah, it was. I was ready to let them shoot me. Then you see, when we started the store, we didn't cater to the gays. But of course we have gay taste, so, and of course our cards we did go gay on those. Pretty wild. But we also went heterosexual. And living in the village, number one, everybody accepts everybody down here. And number two, most of our friends were heterosexual. We take vacations with 14 or 15 of them. I'm going to Mexico next week, and they're only, really a couple that's coming down. They're all heterosexual. So our social life went in that direction. What was that? Just trying to remember that.
You were talking about German Village being bad.
I don't remember how bad it was till I go look at some of the pictures. I used to tell people in Victoria Village, well, you don't have as far to go to restore as we did, but they were burnt out houses, and you'd have to go 6 blocks maybe to find a place where somebody had started restoring. So he said, why don't you move down here? They had bought a house for $7,500. They took the wallpaper off the living room by just taking the garden hose and spraying it. They sold it for like $200,000 later on. So Howard says, I don't want to move down there. We've got a nice 4 acres here, and we weren't working in. This building came for sale. And we looked at it and bought it immediately.
And what year was that?
Probably not 1960 or 61. Well, then that just sort of sucked us into the village. When we bought the building, there was this grocery store and a laundromat. We ended up buying a laundromat. Then the grocery store, we tried to raise the rent $100 a month, and he said no deal, and had been a grocery store there for 100 years. He moved out. We left it open 3 years trying to figure out what to do with it. Finally, it had been a grocery store. We didn't have to go to anybody to get approval. We opened it as a grocery store. We bought Jelly Bellies when it first came out. So Howard had a knack of finding things that were on the edge, which people really liked. They come down once a week to find out what we had. And he was also good at greeting cards. So we had wild greeting cards. And then we conceived the idea of a postcard art show, where you had a postcard, you had to do the art on it. We gave a theme, a number was the theme. It was a number of years we've been in business. They could do anything with it they wanted. And then we gave pretty good prizes. And we got entries from Japan, Italy, Poland, England, got them all over. And we would take them and mount them in plastics. We never went any place that we didn't find stuff to bring back to the store. Went to Mexico once. We didn't speak Spanish. We went to an open market and found a guy that had a lot of baskets, and he couldn't speak English. And little kid was our translator. He translated for us. We bought $800 worth of baskets and gave him cash. And they came. They arrived. We bought tiles, Mexican tile. They were so cheap, but the freight on them was so much that it cost a mint. But we'd always figure on buying where we went. did something interesting. We had dinner in the window. People would put their name in a hat, and we would draw the name, and we'd clear the front window, set up a dining room table or a table, and decorate it profusely, and have a catered dinner with Chateaubriand. Everything was Mouton Rothschild wines, and we would usually do it in December, and then we would close the store and let that set for about a month while we were gone. And we always closed the month of January, and then come back and clean it out. But it was a lot of fun because we had good food, and it created a lot of interest. We put a box of box wine outside for somebody who wanted to drink with us, and so we did a lot of crazy things. Went to the flower show once, and Open Nursery had flamingos, and Howard bought them all, and we started selling flamingos, and we did a whole thing on that. We sold 150 to Wexner once. We rented them. People wanted them for birthdays. We started a Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Plastic Flamingos, and that got a lot of national attention. The museum wanted to do a bike tour d'art, they call it, tour d'art, and they needed a place for stopping for refreshments, so they asked us. Of course, we had art at the time, so they said, "Can we use you as one of the stops?" So we said yes. So Jim, the guy who worked for us, we had a dead tree out in front. He went in and tied flamingos all over it, made it a flamingo tree. That got into the Dispatch. So we're always trying. We did things that got us. Now the women who operate it now operate it as a store. They don't go out seeking all that publicity and everything, but had its advantages, brought the business in.
Sure.
And we became involved publicly a lot with landmarks. And
tell me, I think you said did some things both on radio and in the newspaper. Which did you do first?
First was WSU movies.
All right, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, just that. But we used to do movie reviews once a week on the theater, on WSU. And
do you recall when that started?
No, can't tell you that. It had to be before the founding of CATCO, which is 20-some years old, I think, 25 years old. So it would have had to have been probably 28 years before that. Being in German Village, there was a column in the paper, Southern Light, and they asked us to write a column in there. Then
what was the column in there?
On anything we wanted to talk about.
All right.
That's always been our columns. It was not related to one subject. This Week took us on. Then when Downtown Alive started, which was the one before Columbus Alive, we wrote for that. We wrote for The Messenger, which is East Side Messenger in Bexley. Always the same thing. Then Bob Connors asked us to be on Saturday mornings. No. I don't know what morning it was, but one morning we would be on his show. And we always would, even if we took a trip, we'd make long-distance calls to him and do it over the telephone. One time we were in a coal mine in South Africa, and I said, "Oh my God, Howard, we told Bob Connors we'd be on today." So we raced out, got a cab, went to the hotel, called Bob. The mayor was making a speech. He said, "It's been canceled." But we kept up that relationship with Bob Connor quite a while. Could still do it, but, now that I'm retired, I just like to take the time. I don't want anything governing my time except what I want to do.
When did you stop operating the store?
We bought this building in 1962. We moved to this apartment in 1979. I think it was 5 years ago.
We've spent a good portion of our time today talking about the past. I'm curious, your impression, how is your experience in the 50s, 60s, 70s different than how you see the world today? What are the differences?
the mere fact that you were closeted in the 50s. I mean, you had that feeling, certain things you couldn't do. You had to watch what you said, watch what you did. Today, you know, you can go to the bars, you can go to the bars, you can flaunt it, so to speak. I don't approve of that, but you can. The movies, of course, different, completely different. I do remember a single guy in Springfield who peddled nude photos, and they weren't bad. But he mailed them and got caught once, and he was sent to jail for it, big time. Hell, you can mail anything now. The times are so much more liberal. And I sometimes worry about that because that undertone is still there. You can see the conservative and would love to stop the whole works. And I always remember the lecture this speechwriter for Falwell gave at the Human Rights Dinner once out at New Albany. And he said, you know, they're out there waiting for you. He said whenever they see a political vacancy, they don't care what it is. If it's dog catcher, they don't care. They put their conservative in it. He says, someday they're going to be strong enough to come back at you unless you combat it. And I feel that today, that we're, number one, I feel if you're gay, you don't have to flaunt it. So you're gay. You don't hear the heterosexual going around and say, hey, I'm a heterosexual. But you do hear gays going around and say, hey, I'm gay. I don't like going home. They say the first person they tell is their mother. Well, I'm sure my mom knew I was gay. I never told her, but I'm sure she knew. I'm sure my mom knew. My brother wrote protesting getting rid of the gay priest or minister in Evanston several years ago. Wrote the bishop, and the bottom of the letter he said, P.S. I'm aware of this situation because I have a brother who's gay. He sent me a copy. Now that's the first time it ever said. And I didn't call him. I didn't say anything about it. He called me 3 days later and said, Fred, I didn't offend you when I said that, did you? I said, no, that's probably the nicest thing you ever said about me. So I remember when I took Howard home, I ran back into the house for something. We were there for the weekend, and I went back to the house to get something while Howard was in the car. Mom said, he's a handsome buzzard, isn't he? He sure is, Mom. But she never said anything. And I feel that these young people run to their mom and tell them and confront them. Bingo. Let their mom adjust to the fact. Let her figure it out herself. But I think it's cruel punishment to inflict on everybody just because you're gay. You've got to tell everybody. I mean, if it comes out, then it comes out. But you don't have to broadcast it. I like the fact that you can go to gay bars, although I've not yet felt comfortable because I've never gone to a gay bar without somebody with me that I'm going to come back out with. So when I walk into a gay bar alone, I feel like, oh God, I just feel funny. Well, I just feel the gays have to know that they don't own the world, and we've got to behave. We still have to be a little better than the rest of them because we're, quote, different, and we've got to show them that we can do better. It's much more comfortable living today than it was then. Don't have to worry. That's the thing.
Did you spend a lot of time worrying?
You spend a lot of time making sure that you didn't do something which would give it away. Yeah, you had that in your mind all the time. Whether you knew it or not, you were thinking, well, now.
Did you see other people who maybe got tripped up or exposed and what happened to them?
Well, like I told you, the first kid I knew in school, he was older than I was. When he got married, had lost his job, and then, of course, when I got out of the Army, all this to do about people losing their jobs, and their names were in the paper, and it was really a mess. So I've always had that drummed into me. If something happens, you're going to pay for it.
Fortunately, with you being self-employed for so many years, that gave you some freedom later on.
Before, yeah. Because the railroad was the last place you want to be labeled as gay. And I imagine today it's the same thing.
When you think about what you've experienced so far in your life, what comes to mind as being something that you're proud of, or most satisfied with, that you've been involved with or responsible for?
The fact that we made such a success in the village, and we're able to accomplish so much here, even by the fact that we're gay. I mean, to be recognized, I think the thing I like most is being recognized as being gay and not having it thrown in my face. That's probably the most comforting thing.